Welcome to our series on succeeding at work. I'm Brooke Houchins, and joining me today is my co-host, Dr. Brett Blair. He is one of our senior advisors at Converge Advisory Group. At Converge, we help organizations strengthen leadership, improve performance, and navigate change effectively. Brett, it's great to have you with us today. Thanks for being with us.
Brooke, it's great to be here. Thank you.
And you can learn more about us at convergeworks.com. We are currently in a 3-part series studying why people, teams, and organizations get stuck and what you can do about it. Today, we're exploring one of the biggest reasons that teams, projects, and organizations get stuck: avoiding unresolved issues, the stuff that no one wants to talk about, and the cost of avoiding those tough conversations. So whether it's a struggling employee, a project that's drifting off course, or a major change initiative facing resistance, problems rarely get better when they're ignored. More often, they grow, creating frustration, slowing progress, and undermining results. So our topic today is entitled Escalate or Stagnate: the hidden leadership skill behind successful projects and transformations. So we have a special guest with us today, and that is Alan Geiss. Alan and I worked together when we were at Bayer, and that was many years ago. Many moons ago, as they would say. Alan, you have a phenomenal background and you are truly an expert on this topic. So Alan, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Brooke. Thanks, and thanks for inviting me on the program. Talking about decades of experience. I'm afraid I have decades of experience. Started off in IT when it was punch cards. If you remember, you wouldn't remember those days, Brooks. But once upon a time, computers were huge. They took up entire buildings almost, and it was punch cards. But anyways, I bet I was in probably every role that you could be in IT. And the whole time in those days, especially, you couldn't buy software off the shelf. So it was one project after another project. And so I was really the person that they tapped on the shoulder and say, "Hey, Alan, you're a smart IT guy. Why don't you go figure this out and make this happen for us?" And so that's what I did. It's just, again, projects, and projects. Even when I worked at IBM for a while, I was always involved in the actual installation. So it's one thing to sell a computer system to somebody, but somebody's got to install it and get it all set up so that it actually we're able to realize the benefit of having bought that. So after those decades, then I had an opportunity to go work for Bayer Crop Science. And I was truly blessed to have that opportunity because I was seen as a project expert. And that's what I did for the 20 years that I was working with Bayer, was all kinds of business projects, no longer IT projects, but of course, in today's world, when is IT not involved, right? There's always a component. And in fact, it's probably listening to us right now, figuring out what the next project is going to be, right? So yeah, 20 years of helping not just the business get better at doing projects, but helping countries all around the world get better at project management. So multiple languages, lots of plane trips, lots of weekends away from home, unfortunately. But it was truly worth that. And now I get to spend time helping other organizations out there get better at managing their projects and managing both the top line for the business as well as the bottom line.
And, he's not really bragging as much as he could. I remember when we were working together, like I said, this was probably 18 years ago. Our global leaders would call in Alan whenever a project or a major change was going off the rails. He was kind of like the person you call on the bat phone, and they would bring him in, and so he would come in and save a lot of these projects that were going astray. And so we felt like he'd be the perfect expert for this topic today. Brett, you also kind of understand the importance of this topic. What are your thoughts on us talking about this today?
Well, I come at it more from a psychology perspective as an individual, at the individual level, but at the core of it is to not avoid the difficult conversations. The real issues that are there, they need to be addressed. And we know that if we ignore them or put those aside, they're not going to go away. They're going to come back.
Right.
So we need to find a way to be courageous and have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, that's so good. And, when I think about it, earlier in my career, I struggled with this. I remember a lot of times just, trying to figure out, how to go to the next step to get something solved. And I knew it probably involved a really hard conversation or escalation. No one really likes initiating a tough conversation. I don't think most people enjoy it, but there is a cost involved when you avoid those hard conversations. It may feel safer and easier to avoid it in the moment, but there's always that higher cost involved. So, Alan, what have you seen as the major impact with leaders and organizations that don't do this effectively?
Yeah. So one of the things, though, you mentioned something. I just want to tee this up. I thought, little stretching exercise. Reach around here, your right hand or your left hand, and reach behind down here between your shoulder blades. What is that you're feeling?
Ooh, tension.
It's called a no. It's called a backbone. It's called a backbone. And this is in all life, right? We have to learn to use our backbone and have courage to go have these conversations. So it's just a matter of doing it over and over again. But the biggest impacts, Brooke, what I've seen is that the organization, will have every year they'll have a portfolio of projects they're trying to get accomplished. And if they're not skilled at this, all they're going to do is just spend time fighting fires. They're just going to be putting out fires and maybe not rushing to the scene of the fire, but just, kind of dipping into it. So that's the biggest impact. And if we're just fighting fires, guess what? We're not getting our real job done.
Yeah.
And I discovered this when I was managing projects, is that I was going, good Lord, it feels like all I'm doing here is just fighting fires. And that was exactly what was going on. I was just fighting fires until I went off and got myself retrained to manage these problems. I just spent an inordinate amount of time, what I called babysitting. And I go, man, I did not sign up to be a babysitter. I wanted to get the project done. Then you start digging, and Brett will appreciate this, and you start digging into root cause behind some of this firefighting. It's because of all the dysfunction that was there to begin with. And Brooke, I know you're going to be talking about this in some of the later scenarios that we do, but when there's that much dysfunction, now you're spending all your time trying to build strong teams. And again, you're still not doing any good for the company because you're not taking care of the project. You're taking care of root cause now, because you can't move forward until you start working on getting those teams to trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the biggest problem for most businesses is that their projects get off schedule. They either get off schedule, they get over budget, quality is poor. And I've seen some cases where there was no acceptance of the final product. So we spent millions of dollars and the company said, yeah, we're not going to do that. So
yeah, and it almost
one quick story too. And because I was helping a company out, they were doing building these warehouses, automated warehouses. Brett, I know you've seen articles on them. Amazon has them. They'll go up maybe 12 stories up in the air, and they're pulling pallets and all this automation. Imagine how many different vendors have to come in to make one of these happen. So I was talking to these project managers. They go, yeah, we're like adding a project manager, it seems like every other week. And what we found was we used to be able to have one project manager manage 2 or 3 projects. But when you have this kind of dysfunction, when you have vendors in there and the vendors are going at each other, guess what? It's a whole nother level of escalations occurring. And so you talk about firefighting, it's major firefighting. And at the end of the day, when I looked at it, I said, nobody's explained to you the rules of engagement. How do you properly escalate issues? You don't escalate them to the CEOs of each of the companies, because that was what was happening. And so now you have a whole bunch of folks that have no idea how to manage a project, getting involved in the project. And let me tell you, that's the last stage.
Wow.
Yeah, and as you were talking about the dysfunction, I could see Brett's wheels turning, because he's an expert in a lot of psychology and a lot of the root causes around that dysfunction, and it's making me think of why we struggle to escalate. Why is it we struggle to face those really tough, critical conversations when we see there's a problem? What have you found to be, in your experience, some of those reasons why those escalations don't happen?
So yeah, for me or for Brett?
Sorry, for you, Alan.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Sorry. Just want to make sure. Well, number one reason, as I was thinking about this over the weekend, is training. So, and by the way, when I go deliver this training at organizations, typically somebody from HR stops by to see and sits in for the class for a while. Let's see, who is this guy? What does he know? And is he violating any rules of our organization? And I asked them, I said, when you onboard a new employee, do you train them on how to properly do an escalation? Right? And the answer is always the same. No, we don't. So if you don't have this training, how can I expect you to be good at it? Right? So you're getting it now. How about that? The other one is we're afraid of conflict. Okay. It's just natural. Right? Fear of fight or flight. Well, a lot of times just go ahead and run. I don't want to have any part of this. Right? The other thing I found I was personally a problem is I wanted everybody to like me. And then I figured out that as a project manager, I really shouldn't worry if anybody likes me or not. I need everybody to respect me. And so as long as I'm respectful, then they can be respectful back. So we don't want to burn bridges, but that's, we shouldn't worry about that either. No one likes a tattletale. Okay. This is from elementary school now, right? Well, why did you have to go and tell them I did that? You didn't need to do that, right? We don't want to look bad. That's another good reason. Or we don't want to make somebody else look bad. Okay. Of all these things I'm sharing with you, the one thing, the mantra I want you to keep in your head is, look, it's not personal, it's business. Okay. And that's, I think, when everybody walks in the door in the morning to come to work, that's one thing I would ask you to do is just remember today, kids, it's not personal, it's business.
So good.
Nice. Hey, Alan, what are the benefits of managing these escalations more professionally?
Good question, Brett. First and foremost, I think I'm looking towards myself now. I want to be more effective, more efficient. So if I follow my own teachings, I know that at the end of the day, I'll have more time to manage the actual project, making sure that all the milestones are getting hit, than babysitting. I'm going to be selfish and say project management efficiency and effectiveness is number one. Then what happens? Well, then we have more projects that are delivered on scope, on schedule, on budget, on quality. The other thing, I'll keep coming back to it. I'm always intentionally trying to build a high performance team. Brooke knows this. Like it or not, folks, but I'm going to take you on this journey. If I'm going to be with you for 12 months, what I want to do is take us on a journey where at the end we go back and say, wow, that was about as much fun as I can only imagine having in a 12-month period of time. And success is always fun, right? I mean, we always want to be part of a successful team. And so building that high performance team is important. I want to get issues resolved quickly. That's just a bad habit of mine. I want to check the box. So I go back to being efficient and effective. If you've got a formula for that, why not follow that formula and get to these issues? So you have to create that open environment where people feel like, hey, we discovered in a meeting the other day that we don't know how we're going to quite handle this accounts payable situation. Great, let's talk about it, let's fix it. So let's go into more discovery, right? And lastly, I would say we don't end up being frustrated with one another. Again, going back to, gosh, that was a great day. I can't wait to come back tomorrow and do this all over again, right? If you can get rid of that frustration, good Lord, you'll live a few more days.
Yeah. Nice. Hey, as you think back over your career or the people you work with now, can you give some real life examples of things or issues that should be escalated?
So thanks, Brett. Yeah. Let's start with the normal stuff. Again, as I just mentioned, was talking about, we don't know how we're going to solve for X. Okay. Those are certainly things that if we don't, especially if you're in the beginning of a project, like in the design phase, you need to get all that design and that plan to execute figured out. And so if you've got an issue where you don't know how you're going to do that, then obviously you need to take care of that. So anything there. Also, by the way, when you have a risk and a risk actually happens, now we have what we call an issue. Okay. So if you're doing a good job of risk management, you would have had that risk identified in your risk register, and you would have had a response plan already figured out how we're going to solve this, right? In this case, maybe in one case, it might be, well, let's get Brooke and Brett and a couple of other people that have the right skill sets to do a discovery or a deeper dive on this and then figure out what the plan is going to be to get us back on track. So it's always about project management, at the end. Okay. Other things, behaviors. I've got a couple of story, or at least one story about that. If somebody's habitually late to workshops or to whatever, and it's disruptive of the team, you have to have the conversation. You have to get that behavior out of there because you can't have it. It could be any other behaviors that are going to hurt the team. Because again, now I'm going to say, as a project manager, my team is more important than everything else. So let's figure out what that is. Because again, if we're not going to reach that point that we want to reach of being high performance, if we got this dysfunction within a team. Rarely, but I've had to before, making the same mistake too often. Okay. We're responsible as project managers for companies' resources. So if we have, let's say, a disruptive contractor that's making all of our team members unhappy, we might have to pull them out of there. If they can't change their behavior, be more respectful, we might have to make the tough decision, say, well, we're going to have to get another person and put them in that spot. Okay.
I can remember some situations in my work career where we had a really high performer who was good at their job, but in some of those examples you just mentioned, would show up late, kind of a toxic personality, not relating with the team very well. And so I'm sure that there's organizations big and small that probably wonder, should we just let this person get away with these behaviors because they do a good job in other ways? Can you just kind of unpack that a little further? Why do you need to have that conversation about being late? Or why do you need to address a toxic leader on the team that's got behaviors that are affecting others, even if they are a high performer?
Now, I was trying to think as well, Brooke, which if I was remembering the specific example that you were talking about. Now we're talking about just having that conversation with a difficult employee, right? And so again, to do that effectively, you've got to go in there and not have any emotion in this regards. So you go into that conversation with, hey, we probably should have had this conversation a long time ago, but that's on me. I didn't think it was important, so I didn't take the time. But now I'm taking the time, and I want to spend time here with you today and try to get to what is the root cause of this, right? Why is this person acting the way they are? Because and Brett, you know this from working with colleagues. A lot of times there's something going on in their life you're not even aware of, right? It's Jahari's window, right? It's they're not sharing that with you. So there's maybe something going on in their personal life that's causing problem for them. Maybe it's a medical condition. By the way, they don't want to share that with you. You don't get to know that. They can keep that to themselves, and you'll just have to go further. And again, in that conversation, what you do is say, well, look, here's what the perfect world looks like. In my perfect world, we don't tell people that they're screwing up and that they've done wrong by us or whatever. In a perfect world, we work with everybody and treat them respectfully, yada, 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 yada. Yeah. Right. That you have to share with them what the new world is going to look like. And then you have to share with them, and this is the tough part. If you can't do that, then this is what's got to happen. And this is, I've done reminded of the young moms with the kids in the grocery store. If you do that again, I'm going to sweat your butt. And then they don't, and then they don't, and then they don't. And then they go out, kids bawling, they go outside to the parking lot with the groceries without paying for them. But it's like that, right? It's real world is just like that. And your heart's going to be beating like this when you're having that conversation. But the more you practice it, the more you get used to those emotions. They're normal. So just breathe it in. But you have to do that for the team.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that you have to do that for the team, guess what? Here's the other thing about that. I found my teams often are watching me to see what I'm doing. Okay. And if I don't have that, they're like, just like I am in the store. Mom, are you going to have that conversation with that youngster? If you don't have that conversation, you're going to lose the respect of the rest of your team.
Yeah, that's so good. A few things that you shared there. First off, if you're struggling personally and there's other stuff going on, that's where you're stuck personally. And that makes me think of the topic we're going to do in this series that Brett's going to cover about getting stuck individually, personally in your career and how to overcome that. The other thing that you mentioned was talking about setting expectations. So, it's not just about the work that the team has to do, but it's about the leaders of those teams setting expectations on behaviors and work habits and all of those other things that are going to affect other folks. And so you've got all these great stories. You've got some real world examples that I know you've collected over a few decades. Um, there's probably too many to name, but can you just kind of give me some examples of, some poorly handled escalations that, you've seen over the years, Alan?
Yep, sure. In fact, and I've got some guide. So let me share a story with you, and then what my guideline is for that. But so we were off at a leadership conference up in Pittsburgh, and remember we used to go off those broken. They were big, and oftentimes you would be helping us plan and for those things. But anyways, we get up to this conference, and I'm really looking forward to the ice breaking session with cocktail hour after the first day, because I get to see folks from all over the country that I haven't seen in a while. So getting ready to go to that, and then I get an invite from the boss and says, we need to have a conversation. And anytime when you hear we need to have a conversation, be aware that we're going to be experiencing an escalation. That's code, okay? And so I get to the boardroom, and I thought there's the other invitee. It was a coworker, because he's up there too, because we're both leaders in the organization. We're both up there for this. And then the boss asked me, he goes, "Hey, Alan," he goes, do you ever invite Joe over to your house, like just, for just team building and stuff? I go, several times. In fact, my house is open to a lot of college, and we enjoy having Joe and his team over to the house, and we, have a good time and play games and stuff. Then he asked Joe, he goes, "Joe, do you ever ask Alan to come over to your house?" And it was crickets. And then Joe kind of just blows up. He says, "Well, I'll tell you why we're here." And he tells us, I had upset him at a budget meeting, because I was a portfolio manager, and I asked him to reduce his forecast by $100,000. And he took offense at that. I didn't decrease his budget by 100,000 forecast. Anyways, so I look at my boss. I said, "Boss, when Bill here came to see you about this issue, did you ask him if he had had a conversation with me about this?" And he said, "No, I didn't." I go, "So, well, next time, tell him to go back and have a conversation with me first, and then if we need an escalation, we'll have it." And then I looked at Bill. We'll call him Bill. I said, "Hey, Bill, if you think I get up in the morning with the intention of making you mad, you're mistaken. I had never had an intention of that. So the next time I make you mad in a meeting, please, after the meeting, come back to me and share that with me. And I promise you, I'll do my best not to make you mad anymore." Okay. And so coaching up, but it was still an escalation nonetheless. And they both learned, don't escalate unless you have made a sincere attempt, right, to resolve the issue with the other party. That's rule number one, I think.
Yeah.
Another good example of bad escalations would be when somebody says, you make somebody mad, which in projects happens often enough if we're not doing a good job. Then they go to their boss. Then their boss goes to your boss. And then your boss says, "Hey, Alan, come to my office." And so once again, those fatal words, "come to my office," and you have to now start over, right? You got to start all over. And again, now you're coaching your boss to go coach a peer of his to go coach the other peer to say stop. But what I always do in those situations, guys, is I stop the bad escalation. I don't allow it. And so you're coaching up. And so you got to get good at coaching up. It's just, I don't know how else. It doesn't get any easier. Another one that was really difficult was because it was a difficult conversation. We're in Mexico City. We got 2 Sprinter buses loaded up with, call it 15 expensive consultants each. And we're like military, right? Al's buses are leaving at in this case, they were leaving at 6 a.m. I know that's early, folks, but we got a 2-hour bus ride, and the project's kicking off 2 hours ago. I'm sitting there, and it's 5 after 6. I go, "Why haven't we left yet?" And they go, "Well, so-and-so decided they wanted to go get breakfast." I'm like, "Okay, I'll be right back." And I went in to the cafeteria because I could see him. He was going through a buffet line, no less. And I said, "Put your tray down." And he just turned around, looked at me shocked. "Put your tray down. We've got 2 buses of folks out there waiting on you so that we can all go to the site." I said, so here's what's going to happen. Sometime during the day today, you're going to apologize to all of them that you think you should. I think you should. But here's the other thing. If this ever happens again, you and I are going to have a conversation with your resource manager, your boss, my friend, about why you can't be on time. Okay. And here's what I found through all the years. Anytime I've had to do that, but anytime I've ever had to that I've done that, we've never had to have the conversation.
Mhm.
Grown adults don't like to be having those sorts of conversations with their bosses. Okay.
Yeah.
One last story, quick story. You can escalate too high up into the organization. Not only somebody can't fix it, like they have no idea what you're talking about. Had a situation where getting ready for a conference out in California, and there was an access point that wasn't working, but it was going to affect people's access to Wi-Fi, blah, blah, blah. The ticket had been put in, still hadn't been fixed within a few hours of the ticket being entered in the system. By the way, it wasn't needed for 3 more days. Regardless, the individual sends an email to the global CFO of the company,
Oh my goodness.
who has not even sure what an access point, well, they probably know what an access point is, but no Wi-Fi. They understand that, right? So now that individual just trying to help sends an email out to all of their direct reports. And these are still at a global level. Okay. We have a problem in a location in the West Coast, still at a global level. So then you know what happens. It starts cascading from there until finally I'm getting a phone call from my boss. Once again, can you come to my office? Now what? And he shared it with me and we got it fixed within a short period of time. I just wonder how much that cost the company though, in terms of executives, right? Doing something they had no idea what they're doing, but they're trying to help.
Mhm.
So make sure that when you when you escalate something, you escalate it to somebody who can actually fix the problem.
Mm. That's so good. So, a couple things I heard there were first, you need to go directly to the person you're having the issue with, whether it's above you, beside you, or below you, and try to resolve it between the two of you first, because I think that people appreciate that courtesy. And sometimes folks don't always know that they're doing something wrong or they don't realize the impact of their actions. And then if you do have to escalate it further up the chain, make sure that you're going to the right person who can actually solve the problem. Now, what are your thoughts on blind copying emails? I know that there's a lot of controversy around should you do it, should you not do it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yes, it used to be more of a problem than it is today. I maybe Brett knows. I don't know why that is, but it used to be a standard behavior, right? That if I have a problem with Brooke and Brett, you're Brooke's boss, I might just blind copy you on the email that I send to Brooke about, I didn't appreciate the way you treated me at the meeting the other day. I don't know, you know, it's not cool, just to be honest.
Yeah.
And I have seen, I don't know if you've seen it, I've seen it before where somebody inadvertently then forwarded that out to a group of people. And now we've got a whole bunch of apologizing to do, everybody, right? So yeah, that's not cool. You just don't do that. Really don't. Just it's always got to come back,
And do
right?
you
To
do you
bite you.
suggest that if it's a face to face, you try to get the person on their own privately instead in
Yes.
front of a big group of people and a big audience? I know that can sometimes raise the temperature if there's a lot of people around when you're trying to have those conversations.
Yeah. They have to be quiet time and very intentional, right? And I can also remember banging on a keyboard one night because somebody had made me mad. Because again, I'm taking it personal now, right? And I'm going to send an email. And I remember my wife Missy from the other room. You're not going to hit send on that, are you? I went, no, just type it. I feel better. I feel better now. I'm going to schedule a meeting with the individual, and again, we're going to just have that difficult conversation. But this is what happened. This is how it made me feel. You know, and just see where it goes.
It's good.
That brings to me there's a really good book called The Four Agreements that I think applies in every situation with another human. But where it's really good at work is be impeccable with your words. That's agreement number one. Number two, don't take things personally that other people say or do. Number three, don't make assumptions about the other person. And number four, do your best.
Yeah.
And if you can literally check those four off in an interaction with your boss, with a peer, with a person working for you, over time, that'll accumulate to some pretty good interactions. But it's taking it personally or making assumptions or saying something you wish you didn't tend to get in our way more often than we would like.
So
So
Yeah, you're
that
right.
just came to me as you were talking about that.
it's so good,
Hey,
Brett. Those four.
hey, Alan, I have one more question. Is there like a general rule of thumb on how far to take up an escalation? Like, how do you
So
know when it's too far or not far enough? I'm not clear on that.
let's no, that's a great question. First of all, I want to talk just quickly about following the chain of command. And so there's some guidelines about that, but when you have to follow chain of command. So as a project manager, I can, everything can bubble up to me, right? So now when I'm sitting at that level, if I can't resolve that issue, if you're the product manager, project manager, even organizational manager, they've entitled you to solve these issues. If you can't solve it now, what are you going to do? You have to consult with your boss.
Mm.
Okay. And my boss oftentimes is at a VP level. So I would ask them first, I need to take this up. And I had a situation one time where I had to take it up eventually to senior VPs at the regional level, North American level. But each time I took it to that next level, I had to check in with my boss, my boss's boss, and even that one time their boss. And they always said, "Good luck, Alan. Hope it works out for you." But when you get up that at some point, you can get a little high up the ladder where you go, "Well, I'm not really comfortable here, but okay." Invite the other boss to come along with you always, right? You always have your. So I remember one time I had my boss in the meeting. Then the next meeting I had the CFO in the meeting with me just to make sure that everybody played nice. So there's that. Let me think. There's a couple of other things. If your resource manager in this process of escalating, if your resource manager tells you to stand down, you stand down.
Okay.
Again, right? Career is more important at this point. Now you figure out what that means to you, but the fact is you didn't get to escalate the issue, so now you're still stuck with the issue, right? Too bad for you. Sorry, but you have to do that because if you take it up and you weren't supposed to take it up, that could be a career-ending decision that you've
It's a
made.
new issue.
Yeah.
It's good.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. And so how do when you've gone as far as you can? Is it when your boss gets involved and they're guiding the process? You just gave an example of sometimes you might be told you have to allow the problem to play out. Um, and so and so I guess is that kind of the best rules for the road? That you escalate it, you take it as far as you can, and if you do end up being asked to just let it play out, at that point you've done all you can do. You've been accountable as far as you can possibly go. Would you say that's probably the best way to know you've taken it as far as you can?
Yeah, Brooke, and just to say, I guess I've been lucky in the past where we went back and looked at the issue one more time. Okay, because it got told just to cease and desist. So then you go back and you look at it and you go, okay, what's worst case scenario, right? Because you really, oftentimes, are you introducing, for instance, are you going to introduce a new risk to the project? If you are, or you're going to need resources. I mean, I've come back to the boss after being told to stop and say, well, I took your advice and we went back and looked, and I need to hire 2 more consultants for an extra 2 weeks to get us back on schedule. That's what I'm going to do. And you get permission and you move on, right? But suck it up, buttercup. I mean, you're the project manager. You figure it out.
Yeah.
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 So you got to go figure out how to make, lemonade with lemons sometimes. And that's just real life. By the way, I bet it's only happened to me once in 20 years that I can recall that we had to go back one more time. And we got lucky and found a workaround, right, that let us go ahead. But the issue was resolved, but it wasn't to my satisfaction, but it doesn't matter when I get told no, no is no.
Yeah. And Alan, a lot of these insights you're sharing with us, you have learned and you've gone through a lot of training over the years. You've actually practiced a lot of this out in the field. We've probably got a lot of listeners who, they may be brand new to managing a program or a project. They may be a newbie, or they may be thrown into a role where they're managing projects and it may not even be their official job title, their official function, but they kind of got saddled with something. I know you teach a project management course, boot camp. There's a 2-day version and a 3-day version. Can you just share a little bit about how you can learn these skills and how you can actually grow and develop these skills a little bit further with that type of learning?
Sure, Brooke. The 2-day class really is not focused on what we've been talking about today. It's really introducing folks to the Project Management Institute's framework of project management. Okay. And so it's really getting them used to the terminology and the different hard skills that you have to have in order to manage a project. One mainly be extremely organized. But anyways, the 3-day class though I love the class because now we're going to talk about the soft skills. And that's really the secret to the sauce of managing projects. All the experiences that I've had, but also things that I've learned from going off and getting trained. One of my mentors, Neil Witten, wrote a book, No Nonsense Advice for Successful Project Managers. And in it, he shared all these different topics like conflict management, having a backbone, having courage over everything. So we packed that all into a 3-day class where we let them experience it because we learn right by doing.
Mhm.
And so we create role plays where they have to have difficult conversations that aren't going to be fun. And we even let them tap out like in all-star wrestling. If they get stuck, we'll have them tap out and let somebody else get into the hot seat. And I think, Brooke, you might have even been part of role plays like this in the past where you get to be the disgruntled employee, and you do a great job of that, I must say. We call it the rodeo. If you can hang on for 8 seconds, good luck, buddy. Anyways,
It's good.
so it's really we learn by doing, and that the 3-day class is experiential, where they learn a lot of these things that we chatted about today, but even more how to build high performance teams. To me, again, it shouldn't be just I like doing it. It's just fun, right? Team building is fun. When I tell you the fun part is when you get to the finish line, when you see this group
Oh yeah.
that actually is disappointed that they're going to have to disband. Then you
Right.
know that you were when people start crying at the end, then you know
Mm.
you had a good result. So
I know that boot
anyways,
camp has gotten amazing reviews and ratings in the past when you've delivered it. I'm going to ask Brett if he has any closing wrap up thoughts. And then, Alan, I'm going to give you the last word on our conversation today. So, Brett, I know you've been part of our conversation as an executive coach. Any thoughts come to mind for folks that may be listening and just want to feel a little bit of insight and encouragement on this topic?
I've learned so much in this conversation. When I think of project management, I tend to think of the technical elements of it, but woven through all of it are people. And the conversation's been overwhelming about people and how people interact with each other, how you communicate with each other, how you take on difficult subjects with each other. And I think that's just beautiful. So I've learned a lot. I don't know what to add, but it's a constant for me. It's a lifelong journey of how to think better in my own life and how to interact better with others. And the more we can get better at that, the better we can be part of project teams
Yeah.
and successful projects that unfold.
That's good. That's good. And even some of the skills that Alan shared today can be used in your personal life, can be used, in your volunteer work. It doesn't just apply to work. And so, conflict and problems and issues are everywhere. And so these are great tips. Alan, I'm going to give you the last word and then I'm going to wrap up. So, any other remaining thoughts for our listeners that you have today?
just don't take it personal. I say be like Spock, right? And just it's logic. Just use your logic. Don't leave your emotions at home.
Yeah.
It's no place to manage a project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Great.
good. So good. Yeah. It makes me think of a phrase I always heard a lot in the corporate world, which is assume good intent. Most people don't get up every day and want to make someone's day hard. And so going into those conversations with grace and not taking it personally, but just knowing that all of this is part of just being better as a team. Problems rarely destroy organizations. It's really the unaddressed problems that derail things and cause teams and people and organizations to get stuck. The strongest leaders are not the leaders who avoid difficult conversations and escalations. They're the ones who handle them with grace and initiate them and resolve them head on before those small problems become big problems. And so I want to thank my co host today, Dr. Brett Blair. Brett is also, as you know, one of our Converge Advisory Group senior executive coaches. If you're interested, you can work with Brett one on one or in a group setting. And I want to thank our special guest today and our expert, Alan Geiss, who is also part of the Converge Advisory Group team. Alan, you brought us so many good tips and tricks and guidelines and stories. I want to thank you so much to both of you for your time today. It was so good having this conversation. And
Thank you, bro.
and we know that
Good.
this is not easy. We know that, sometimes you might need a little help in this area. So, for our listeners out there, our team of experts are really gifted in walking leaders and teams through change and transformation efforts. So, if you're feeling like, hey, you know what? I just need a little more help, we have a free assessment on our website that you can take at convergeworks.com. And that is about 7 questions, and it will allow you to figure out if there's some ways we can help you even further. You can check out the other videos in our series, Succeeding at Work, Why People, Teams, and Organizations Get Stuck, and what you can do about it. So until next time, thanks everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye now.